Do you feel a shiver up your spine from fear? Yes, it's another story from the Nightshade diary. You know what that means. Check under the bed and make sure no one or nothing is there. Is the closet door securely shut? Then leave your disbelief behind. Amp up your imagination and hang on tight for another ride into terror and mystery. And like all good horror stories, just imagine it's a dark and stormy night. And remember, screaming like a little girl is permitted. The Cookie Lady by Philip K. Dick. Where you going, Bubber? Arnie Mills shouted from across the street, fixing papers for his route. No place, Bubber Searle said. You going to see your lady friend? Ernie laughed and laughed. What do you go visit that old lady for? Let us in on it. Bubber went on. He turned the corner and went down Elm Street. Already he could see the house at the end of the street, set back a little on the lot. The front of the house was overgrown with weeds, old dry weeds that rustled and chattered in the wind. The house itself was a little gray box, shabby and unpainted, the porch steps sagging. There was an old weather-beaten rocking chair on the porch, with a torn piece of cloth hanging over it. Bubber went up the walk. As he started up the rickety steps, he took a deep breath. He could smell it, the wonderful warm smell, and his mouth began to water. His heart thudding with anticipation, Bubber turned the handle of the bell. The bell grated rustily on the other side of the door. There was silence for a time, then the sounds of someone stirring. Mrs. Drew opened the door. She was old, very old, a little dried-up old lady, like the weeds that grew along the front of the house. She smiled down at Bubber, holding the door wide for him to come in. You're just in time, she said. Come on inside, Bernard. You're just in time. They're just now ready. Bubber went to the kitchen door and looked in. He could see them, resting on a big blue plate on top of the stove. Cookies. A plate of warm, fresh cookies right out of the oven. Cookies with nuts and raisins in them. How do they look? Mrs. Drew said. She rustled past him into the kitchen. And maybe some cold milk, too? You like cold milk with them. She got the milk pitcher from the window box on the back porch. Then she poured a glass of milk for him and set some of the cookies on a small plate. Let's go into the living room, she said. Bubber nodded. Mrs. Drew carried the milk and the cookies in and set them on the arm of the couch. Then she sat down in her own chair, watching Bubber plop himself down by the plate and begin to help himself. Bubber ate greedily, as usual, intent on the cookies, silent except for chewing sounds. Mrs. Drew waited patiently until the boy had finished, and his already ample sides bulged that much more. When Bubber was done with the plate, he glanced towards the kitchen again, at the rest of the cookies on the stove. Wouldn't you like to wait until later for the rest? Mrs. Drew said. All right, Bubber agreed. How were they? Fine. That's good. She leaned back in her chair. Well, what did you do in school today? How did it go? All right. The little old lady watched the boy look restlessly around the room. Bernard, she said presently, won't you stay and talk to me for a while? He had some books on his lap, some school books. Why don't you read to me from your books? You know, I don't see too well anymore, and it's a comfort for me to be read to. Can I have the rest of the cookies after? Of course. Bubber moved over toward her to the end of the couch. He opened his books, World Geography, Principles of Arithmetic, Hoyt Speller. Which do you want? She hesitated. The geography? Bubber opened the big blue book at random. Peru. Peru is bounded on the north by Ecuador and Colombia, on the south by Chile, and on the east by Brazil and Bolivia. Peru is divided into three main sections. These are, first, the little old lady watched him read, his fat cheeks wobbling as he read, holding his finger next to the line. She was silent, watching him, studying the boy intently as he read, drinking in each frown of concentration, every motion of his arms and hands. She relaxed, letting herself sink back in her chair. He was very close to her, only a little way off. There was only the table and lamp between them. How nice it was to have him come. He had been coming for over a month now, ever since the day she had been sitting on her porch and seen him go by and thought to call to him, pointing to the cookies by her rocker. Why had she done it? She did not know. She had been alone so long that she found herself saying strange things and doing strange things. She saw so few people, only when she went down to the store, or the mailman came with her pension check, or the garbage man. The boy's voice droned on. She was comfortable, peaceful, and relaxed. The little old lady closed her eyes and folded her hands in her lap. And as she sat dozing and listening, something began to happen. The little old lady was beginning to change, her gray wrinkles and lines dimming away. As she sat in the chair, she was growing younger, the thin, fragile body filling out with youth again. The gray hair thickened and darkened, color coming to the wispy strands. Her arms filled, to the mottled flesh turning a rich hue, as it had once been many years before. Mrs. Drew breathed deeply, not opening her eyes. She could feel something happening, but she did not know just what. Something was going on. She could feel it, and it was good. But what it was she did not exactly know. It had happened before, almost every time the boy came and sat by her, especially of late, since she had moved her chair nearer to the couch. She took a deep breath. How good it felt. The warm fullness, a breath of warmth inside her cold body for the first time in years. In her chair, the little old lady had become a dark-haired matron of perhaps 30, a woman with full cheeks and plump arms and legs. Her lips were red again, her neck even a little too fleshy, as it had once been in the long-forgotten past. Suddenly the reading stopped. Bubber put down his book and stood up. "I have to go," he said. "Can I take the rest of the cookies with me?" She blinked, rousing herself. The boy was in the kitchen, filling his pockets with cookies. She nodded, dazed, still under the spell. The boy took the last cookies. He went across the living room to the door. Mrs. Drew stood up. All at once, the warmth left her. She looked down at her hands, wrinkled thin. "Oh," she murmured. Tears blurred her eyes. It was gone. Gone again, as soon as he moved away. She tottered to the mirror above the mantel and looked at herself. Old faded eyes stared back, eyes deep set in a withered face. Gone, all gone as soon as the boy had left her side. "I'll see you later," Bubber said. "Please," she whispered. "Please come back again. Will you come back?" "Sure," Bubber said listlessly. He pushed the door open. "Goodbye." He went down the steps. In a moment she heard his shoes against the sidewalk. He was gone. "Bubber, you come in here." May Searle stood angrily on the porch. "You get in here and sit down at the table." "All right," Bubber came slowly up on the porch, pushing inside the house. "What's the matter with you?" She got his arm. "Where have you been? Are you sick?" "I'm tired," Bubber rubbed his forehead. His father came through the living room with a newspaper in his undershirt. "What's the matter?" he said. "Look at him," May Searle said, "all worn out. What you been doing, Bubber?" "He's been visiting that old lady," Ralph Searle said. "Can't you tell? He's always washed out after he's been visiting her." "What do you go there for, Bub? What goes on?" "She gives him cookies," May said. "You know how he is about things to eat. He'd do anything for a plate of cookies." "Bub," his father said, "listen to me. I don't want you hanging around that crazy old lady anymore. Do you hear me? I don't care how many cookies she gives you. You come home too tired. No more of that. You hear me?" Bubber looked down at the floor, leaning against the door. His heart beat heavily, labored. "I told her I'd come back," he muttered. "You can go once more," May said, going into the dining room, "but only once more. Tell her you won't be able to come back again. You make sure you tell her nice. I'll go upstairs and get washed up." "After dinner, better have him lie down," Ralph said, looking up at the stairs, watching Bubber climb slowly, his hand on the banister. He shook his head. "I don't like it," he murmured. "I don't want him going there any more. There's something strange about that old lady." "Well, it'll be the last time," May said. Wednesday was warm and sunny, and Bubber strode along, his hands in his pockets. He stopped in front of McVane's drugstore for a minute, looking speculatively at the comic books. At the soda fountain, a woman was drinking a big chocolate soda. The sight of it made Bubber's mouth water. That settled it. He turned and continued on his way, even increasing his pace a little. A few minutes later, he came up on the gray sagging porch and rang the bell. Below him the weeds blew and rustled with the wind. It was almost 4 o'clock. He could not stay too long, but then it was the last time anyhow. The door opened. Mrs. Drew's wrinkled face broke into smiles. "Come in, Bernard. It's good to see you standing there. It made me feel so young again to have you come visit." He went inside looking around. "I'll start the cookies. I didn't know if you were coming." She patted into the kitchen. "I'll get them started right away. You sit down on the couch." Bubber went over and sat down. He noticed that the table and lamp were gone. The chair was right up next to the couch. He was looking at the chair in perplexity when Mrs. Drew came rustling back into the room. "They're in the oven. I had the batter all ready." Now she sat down in the chair with a sigh. "Well, how did it go today? How was school?" "Fine." She nodded. How plump he was, the little boy, sitting just a little distance from her, his cheeks red and full. She could touch him. He was so close. Her aged heart thumped. To be young again. Youth was so much. It was everything. What did the world mean to the old, when all the world is old, lad? "Do you want to read to me, Bernard?" she asked presently. "I didn't bring any books." "Oh," she nodded. "Well, I have some books," she said quickly. "I'll get them." She got up, crossing to the bookcase. As she opened the doors, Bubber said, "Mrs. Drew, my father says I can't come here any more. He says this is the last time. I thought I'd tell you." She stopped, standing rigid. Everything seemed to leap around her, the room twisting furiously. She took a harsh, frightened breath. "Bernard, you're not coming back?" "No, my father says not to." There was silence. The old lady took a book at random and came slowly back to her chair. After a while she passed the book to him, her hands trembling. The boy took it without expression, looking at its cover. "Please read, Bernard, please." "All right." He opened the book. "Where I'll start?" Anywhere, Bernard." He began to read. It was something by Trollope. She only half heard the words. She put her hands to her forehead, the dry skin brittle and thin, like old paper. She trembled with anguish. "The last time?" Bubber went on, monotonously. Against the window a fly buzzed. Outside the sun began to set, the air turning cool. A few clouds came up and the wind in the trees rushed furiously. The old lady sat close by the boy, closer than ever, hearing him read. The sound of his voice, sensing him close by. Was this really the last time? Terror rose up in her, and she pushed it back. The last time. She gazed at him, the boy sitting so close to her. After a time she reached out, her thin, dry hand. She took a deep breath. He would never be back. There would be no more times, no more. This was the last time he would sit here. She touched his arm. Bubber looked up. "What is it?" he murmured. "You don't mind if I touch your arm, do you?" "No, I guess not," he went on reading. The old lady could feel the youngness of him flowing between her fingers through her arm. A pulsating, vibrating youngness so close to her. It had never been that close, where she could actually touch it. The feel of life made her dizzy, unsteady. And presently, it began to happen as before. She closed her eyes, letting it move over her, filling her up, carried into her by the sound of the voice and the feel of the arm. The change, the glow was coming over her. The warm, rising feeling. She was blooming again, filling with life, swelling into richness, as she had been once long ago. She looked down at her arms. Rounded they were, and the nails clear. Her hair, black again, heavy and black against her neck. She touched her cheek. The wrinkles had gone, the skin pliant and soft. Joy filled her, a growing, bursting joy. She stared around her at the room. She smiled, feeling her firm teeth and gums, red lips, strong white teeth. Suddenly she got to her feet, her body secure and comforted. She turned a little, lithe, quick circles. Bubber stopped reading. "Are the cookies ready?" he said. "I'll see." Her voice was alive, deep with a quality that had dried out many years before. Now it was there again, her voice, throaty and sensual. She walked quickly to the kitchen and opened the oven. She took out the cookies and put them on top of the stove. "All ready," she called gaily. "Come and get them." Bubber came past her, his gaze fastened on the side of the cookies. He did not even notice the woman by the door. Mrs. Drew hurried from the kitchen. She went into the bedroom, closing the door after her. Then she turned, gazing into the full-length mirror on the door. Young. She was young again, filled out with the sap of vigorous youth. She took a deep breath, her steady bosom swelling. Her eyes flashed, and she smiled. She spun, her skirts flying, young and lovely. And this time, it had not gone away. She opened the door. Bubber had filled his mouth and his pockets. He was standing at the center of the living room, his face fat and dull, a dead white. "What's the matter?" Mrs. Drew said. "I'm going." "All right, Bernard. And thanks for coming to read to me." She laid a hand on his shoulder. "Perhaps I'll see you again sometime." "My father." "I know," she laughed gaily, opening the door for him. "Goodbye, Bernard, goodbye." She watched him go slowly down the steps one at a time. Then she closed the door and skipped back into the bedroom. She unfastened her dress and stepped out of it, the worn gray fabric suddenly distasteful to her. For a brief second she gazed at her full, rounded body, her hands on her hips. She laughed with excitement, turning a little, her eyes bright. What a wonderful body, bursting with life. A swelling breast, she touched herself. The flesh was firm. There was so much, so many things to do. She gazed about her, breathing quickly. So many things. She started the water running in the bathtub, and then went to tie her hair up. The wind blew around him as he trudged home. It was late. The sun had set, and the sky overhead was dark and cloudy. The wind that blew and nudged against him was cold, and it penetrated through his clothing, chilling him. The boy felt tired, his head ached, and he stopped every few minutes, rubbing his forehead and resting, his heart laboring. He left Elm Street and went up Pine Street. The wind screeched around him, pushing him from side to side. He shook his head, trying to clear it. How weary he was, how tired his arms and legs were. He felt the wind hammering at him, pushing and plucking at him. He took a breath and went on, his head down. At the corner he stopped, holding on to a lamp post. The sky was quite dark. The street lights were beginning to come on. At last he went on, walking as best he could. "Where is that boy?" May Searle said, going out on the porch for the 10th time. Ralph flicked on the light, and they stood together. What an awful wind. The wind whistled and lashed at the porch. The two of them looked up and down the dark street, but they could see nothing but a few newspapers and trash being blown along. "Let's go inside," Ralph said. "He sure is going to get a licking when he gets home." They sat down at the dinner table. Presently May put down her fork. "Listen, do you hear something?" Ralph listened. Outside, against the front door, there was a faint sound, a tapping sound. He stood up. The wind howled outside, blowing the shades in the room upstairs. "I'll go see what it is," he said. He went to the door and opened it. Something gray and dry, was blowing up against the porch, carried by the wind. He stared at it, but he could not make it out. A bundle of weeds in rags, blown by the wind, perhaps. The bundle bounced against his leg. He watched it drift past him against the wall of the house. Then he closed the door again slowly. "What is it?" May called. "Just the wind," Ralph Searle said. Something Had to Be Done, by David Drake. "He was out in the hall just a minute ago, sir," the pinch-faced WAC said, looking up from her typewriter in irritation. "You can't mistake his face." Captain Richmond shrugged and walked out of the busy office. Blinking in the dim marble were a dozen confused civilians, bussed in for their pre-induction physicals. No one else was in the hallway. The thick-waisted officer frowned, then thought to open the door of the men's room. "Sergeant Morzak," he called. Glass clinked within one of the closed stalls, and a deep voice with a catch in it grumbled, "Yeah, be right with you." Richmond thought he smelled gin. "You the other ghoul?" the voice questioned, as the stall swung open. Any retort Richmond might have made withered when his eyes took in the cadaverous figure in ill-tailored greens. Platoon sergeants' chevrons on their sleeves, and below them a longer row of service stripes than the captain remembered having seen before. God, this walking corpse might have served in World War II. Most of the ribbons ranked above the sergeant's breast pockets were unfamiliar, but Richmond caught the little V for Valor winking in the center of a silver star. Even in those metal happy days in the Southeast Asia, they didn't toss many of those around. The sergeant's cheeks were hollow, his fingers grotesquely thin, where they rested on top of the door or clutched the handles of his zipped AWOL bag. Where no mole squatted, his skin was as white as a convict's, but the moles were almost everywhere, hands and face. Dozens and scores of them, rotting together in welted obscenity. The sergeant laughed starkly. Pretty, aren't I? The docs tell me I got too much sun over there and it gave me runaway warts. Hell, 4 years is enough time for it, too. Richmond grunted in embarrassment, edging back into the hall to have something to do. Well, the car's in back. If you're ready, we can see the Lukowskis. Yeah, Christ, the sergeant said. That's what I came for, to see the Lukowskis. He shifted his bag as he followed the captain, and it clinked again. Always before, the other man on the notification team had been a stateside officer like Richmond himself. He had heard that a few low-casualty outfits made a habit of letting whoever knew the dead man best accompany the body home. But this was his first actual experience with the practice. He hoped it would be his last. Threading the green Ford through the heavy traffic of the city center, Richmond said, I take it Private Lankowski was one of your men? Yeah. Stevie Boy was in my platoon for about 3 weeks. Morzek agreed with a chuckle. Lost 6 men in that time, and he was the last. 6 out of 29. Not very damn good, was it? You were under heavy attack? Hell, no. Mostly the dinks were letting us alone for a change. We were out in the middle of War Zone C, you know, most Christ-bitten stretch of country you ever saw. No dinks, no trees. They'd all been defoliated. Not a damn thing but dust and each other's company. Well, what did happen? Richmond prompted impatiently. Traffic had thinned somewhat among the blocks of old buildings, and he began to look for house numbers. Oh, mostly they just died, Morzek said. He yawned alcoholically. Stevie now. He got blown to hell by a grenade. Richmond had learned when he was first assigned to notification duty not to dwell on the way his mission had died. The possibilities varied from unpleasant to ghastly. He studiously avoided saying anything more to the sergeant besides him until he found the number he wanted. 116. This must be the Lankowskis. Morzek got out on the curb side, looking more skeletal than before in the dappled sunlight. He still held his AWOL bag. You can leave it in the car, Richmond suggested. I'll look up. Nah, I'll take it in, the sergeant said as he waited for Richmond to walk around the car. You know, this is every damn thing I brought from Nam. They didn't bother to open it at Travis, just asked me what I had in it. A quart of gin, I told them. But I won't have it long, and they waved me through to make my connections. One advantage to this kind of trip. A bell chimed far within the house when Richmond pressed the button. It was cooler than he had expected on the pine-shaded porch. Miserable as these high, dark old houses were to heat, the design made a world of sense in the summer. A light came on inside. The stained glass window left of the door darkened and a latch snicked open. Please to come in, invited a soft-voiced figure hidden by the dark oak panel. Morzek grinned inappropriately and led the way into the hall, brightly lighted by an electric chandelier. Mr. Lankowski, Richmond began to the wispy little man who had admitted them. We are. But yes. You're here to tell us when Stefan shall come back, are you not? Lankowski broke in. Come into the sitting room, please. Anna and my daughter Rose are there. Mr. Lankowski, Richmond tried to explain as he followed, all too conscious of the sardonic grin on Morzek's face. You have been informed by telegram that Private Lankowski was killed? Yes, said the younger of the two red-haired women as she got up from the sofa. But his body will come back to us soon, will he not? The man on the telephone said. She was gorgeous, Richmond thought, cool and assured, half smiling, as her hair cascaded over her left shoulder, like a thick copper conduit. Disconcerted as he was by the whole situation, it was a moment before he realized that Sergeant Morzek was saying, the coffin's probably at the airport now, but there's nothing in it, about 150 pounds of gravel. Did the telegram tell you what happened to Stevie? Sergeant, Richmond shouted, you drunken... Oh, calm down, Captain, Morzek interrupted bleakly. The Lankowskis, they understand. They want to hear the story, the whole story, don't they? Yes. There was a touch too much sibilance in the words as it crawled from the older woman. Stefan Lankowski's mother. Her hair was too grizzled now to have more than a touch of red in it, enough to rust the tight ringlets clinging to her skull like a helmet of mail. Without quite appreciating its importance, Richmond noticed that Mr. Lankowski was standing in front of the room's only door. With perfect nonchalance, Sergeant Morzek sat down on an overstuffed chair, laying his bags across his knees. Well, he said, there was quite a report on that one. We told him how Stevie was trying to booby-trap a white phosphorus grenade, fixed to go off as soon as some dink pulled the pin instead of 4 seconds later. And he goofed. Mrs. Lankowski's breath whistled out very softly. She said nothing. Morzek waited for further reaction before he smiled horribly and added, he burned. A couple of pounds of Willie Pete going bluey. Well, that keeps burning all the way through you. Like I said, the coffin's full of gravel. My God, Morzek, the captain whispered. It was not the sergeant's savage grin that froze him, but the icy-eyed silence of the 3 Lankowskis. The grenade, that was real, Morzek concluded. The rest of the report was a lie. Rose Lankowski reseated herself gracefully on a chair in front of the heavily draped windows. Why don't you start at the beginning, Sergeant? She said with a thin smile that did not show her teeth. There's much we would like to know before you are gone. Sure, Morzek agreed, tracing a mottled forefinger across the pigmented callosities on his face. Not much to tell. The night after Stevie got assigned to my platoon, the dinks hit us. No big thing. Had one fellow dusted off with brass in his ankle from his machine gun blowing up. That was all. But a burst of AK fire knocked Stevie off his tank right at the start. What's all this about? Richmond complained. If he was killed by rifle fire, why say a grenade? Silence. The command crackled like heel plates on concrete. Sergeant Morzek nodded. Why, thank you, Mr. Lankowski. You see, the captain there doesn't know the bullets didn't hurt Stevie. He told us his flak jacket had stopped him. It couldn't have, and it didn't. I saw it that night, before he burned it. 5 holes to stick your fingers through, right over the breast pocket. But Stevie was fine, not a mark on him. Well, Christ, maybe he'd had a bandolier or ammo under the jacket. I had other things to think about. Morzek paused to glance around his audience. All this, well, Christ, maybe he'd had a bandolier of ammo under the federal building. You won't be long, the girl hissed in reply. Morzek grinned. They broke up the squadron then, he rasped on. Gave each platoon a sector of War Zone C to cover up, to stir up the dinks. There's more life on the moon than there is on that stretch we patrolled. 3rd night out, one of the gunners died. They flew him back to Saigon for an autopsy, but damned if I know what they found. Galloping malaria, we figured. 3 nights later, another guy died. Dawson, on 3-6. Christ, the names don't matter. Sometime after midnight, his track commander woke up, heard him moaning. We got him back to Quan Loi to a hospital, but he never came out of it. The lieutenant thought he got wasp stung on the neck. Here, you know, Morzek touched his 2 fingers to his jugular, like he was allergic. Oh, it happens. But what about Stefan? Mrs. Lankowski asked. The others do not matter. Yes, finish it quickly, Sergeant, the younger woman said, and this time Richmond did catch the flash of her teeth. We had a 3rd death, Morzek said agreeably, stroking the zipper of his AWOL bag back and forth. We were all jumping by then. I doubled the guard, 2 men awake on every track. 3 nights later, and nobody in the platoon remembered anything about 2,400 hours till Riggs' partner blinked at 10 of 1 and found him dead. In the morning, one of the boys came to me. He'd seen Stevie slip over to Riggs, he said, but he was zonked out on grass and didn't think it really just happened until he woke up in the morning and saw Riggs under a poncho. By then he was scared enough to tell the whole story. Well, we were all jumpy. You killed Stefan? It was not a question, but a flat statement. Oh, how Lankowski, Morzek said absently. What does it matter who rolled a grenade into his bunk? The story got around and something had to be done. Knowing what you know, you came here, Mrs. Lankowski murmured liquidly. You must be mad. Nah, I'm not crazy. I'm just sick. The sergeant brushed his left hand over his forehead. Malignant melanoma, the docs told me. 26 years in the goddamn army. And in another week or two, I'd be warded to death. Captain, he added, turning his cancerous face towards Richmond, you'd better leave through the window. Neither of you will leave, snarled Rose Lankowski, as she stepped toward the men. Morzek lifted a fat gray cylinder from his bag. Know what this is, honey? He asked conversationally. Richmond screamed and leaped for the window. Rose ignored him, slashing her hand out for the phosphorus grenade. Drapery wrapping the captain's body shielded him from glass and splintered window frame as he pitched out into the yard. He was still screaming there when the blast of white fire bulged the walls of the house.